Alrighty. As of right now, it's been about 1 week since the Marathon closed alpha has gone live. I got a code, I played a bunch, and I have thoughts. Some thoughts are good. Others, though, not so good. Today, we're going to go over all of them. It's been kind of hard categorizing my thoughts, but I've managed to make the following chapters for today's video, so if you want to just skip to one in particular, including my final thoughts on how I currently feel about Marathon, which is at the very end of the video, go right ahead. If you want the extremely short version though, I'll say the following. While I've enjoyed my time with the alpha so far, I fear that Marathon may not hold the majority of players' attention for the long haul. Of course, Bungie does have time to improve on that, but September is a lot closer than you might realize. Anyway, let's get into the details. Starting off with general gameplay impressions and opening thoughts. Here's a really straightforward play-by-play of how your average Marathon play session is going to play out once you've figured out the general flow of the game. Before firing up a match, you'll open up the factions page and make sure that you've selected a contract. Contracts are basically in-game bounties. They give you a particular objective to accomplish in exchange for a specific reward, and there's kinda no reason to go into a match without having one active, so you'll double check that you have one active. Next, before launching, you'll also probably double check your faction upgrade tree, and you'll remind yourself, yes, this is the upgrade I've had my eyes on. For example, on the Syak faction page, I've been eyeing this upgrade right here, Cyber Acme Expansion, which will expand my vault size by 8 rows. Completely fantastic for a dirty gear hoarder like me. In order to finish this, I still need to find 4 synthetic rubber items while out in the field, so I'll make a mental note to keep an eye out for that item in particular when I do load into the game. Then I will squad up with the boys, grab some stuff out of my vault, buy some ammo and health packs from the black market, i.e. the in-game item store, and then launch into the game. When we're finally in the game, 2 things are sort of going on at the same time. Thing number 1, you're kind of participating in a giant scavenger hunt. You're on the lookout, not only for dank loot to make your runner more deadly, but you're also looking for random little items that you can use to potentially get faction upgrades, like the rubber we mentioned earlier. Also, thing number 2, you're looking for other teams to hopefully catch off guard so you can deliberately ruin their day by surprising and killing all of them. And of course, stripping them of all their best loot when they are dead. Marathon is both a scavenger hunt and a game of manhunt going on all at the same time. When moving from location to location, you'll often encounter gangs of PvE robots, and good lord, you better put some respect on those things. You'd probably imagine that in a PvP-focused game, these bots would likely just be pushovers. And to be fair, the weaker ones are, but many of them will straight up beat your ass like a drum if you're too cocky and run into a crowd of them guns blazing. Bots are also extremely good at hearing the sounds of nearby combat and rushing into the room like your pet cat who just heard the electric can opener start whirring. Sometimes you'll have situations where you're fighting both another team of players and a squad of bots at the same time. A terrible tragedy when it happens to you, but hilarious and fortunate when it happens to the team that you're pushing. Eventually, one of 2 things will happen. Scenario A, you manage to encounter and outplay one or many other teams if you're really on fire, taking their best stuff, then eventually heading to an extraction point where you'll get out with backpacks full of loot, feeling like a goddamn king. Or scenario B, while looting and or looking for trouble, you'll get completely taken off guard by another team, get wiped, and lose all the stuff that you were carrying. Then, depending on how valuable the stuff you were carrying was and how long it took you to earn, you will then become pregnant with anger and spite. It will continue to grow and fester inside of you as you load into the next match and attempt to pass that hate on to another team by wiping them and stealing their best stuff. Marathon is basically the biggest embodiment of the "it's so Jover, we are so back" meme. You can and will go back and forth between having it all and losing it all. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, that sounds really goddamn tedious. I mean, yeah, for some people it definitely will be. Others will enjoy the feeling of going, quote, all in a hand of poker, i.e. putting everything you have on the line and then feeling the panic of, I'm about to lose all this good shit, or the rush of the rich get richer, hell yeah. Others still will enjoy the slow but oddly satisfying process of filling out your faction upgrade tree one upgrade at a time. In short, this will definitely be a game for some, but not for all. I'll elaborate more in my final thoughts, but for right now, why don't we continue down the rabbit hole? But real quick, today's video is sponsored by Once Human, so let's thank them real quick. Once Human is a AAA quality post-apocalyptic multiplayer survivor MMO shooter rated 8 out of 10 by IGN and rated 10 out of 10 by me for reasons. Once Human Mobile launches on April 23rd, fully replicating the original PC gameplay and enabling cross-platform play. With many noobs about to join into the game, it's a perfect time to make friends and embark on adventures together. If you're looking for a game that has a wide variety of weapon builds, yeah, go ahead and check that box, because Once Human has that. It's more than just blindly collecting loot and hoarding it like a dragon on a pile of coins, although I've been known to do that. There's a bunch of awesome weapon and armor blueprints that you can combine together in unique and fun ways. You can take those builds and experience great boss fights. There's, of course, also a wide variety of crazy cosmetics if that's more your thing. Grab a couple of homies and jump on into a post-apocalyptic open world with creepy monsters, base building, great gunplay, and more. Click my link in the video description or scan the QR code to play Once Human cross-platform today and get 1016 freebies all at once. Join the Discord to stay tuned for news and perks for both PC and mobile players, and thank you again to Once Human. Alright, we back. Why don't we talk about aim assist real quick? While people have their fair share of Bungie critiques that they never hesitate to share, one thing that I feel most people out there agree on is that gunplay and gun feel in Bungie games is great, and I agree. Gunplay in all the Bungie-made Halo games, great. Gunplay in Destiny and Destiny 2, great. And then there's Marathon. Now, I'm not going to say that Marathon gunplay feels bad. It's actually the exact opposite. Not only does it feel good, it feels way too good. I'm not exaggerating when I say that week 1 of the Marathon closed alpha was literally the most aim assist I feel like I've ever been given in a shooter game when playing on M&K. When I shot at bots or other players, especially from around medium to medium long range, it almost felt impossible to miss. And because the aim assist was so strong, if I got into a duel with another player, if I got first shot, aka if I shoot them before they started shooting me, it was basically all but guaranteed that I was gonna win that gunfight. Of course, that wasn't always the case. The enemy could be near cover or have a movement ability that let them get the hell out of dodge. But yeah, normally when going into a new shooter game for the first time, I go into the game settings and fiddle with things like changing my FOV, in-game sensitivity, and all that kind of stuff. With Marathon though, I was kinda baffled to find that the game literally had an option to disable aim assist for mouse and keyboard. Now, no disrespect at all, but I'm genuinely asking, if you were a mouse and keyboard player, please tell me, in what fucking universe would you ever turn this option off? Doing so would basically be nerfing myself in a PvP game, which I have no intention of doing. Now, I do want to be clear though that I respect where the devs were coming from with this balancing option. The age-old debate of what is more broken in PvP, controller or mouse and keyboard, has been going on in the Destiny community for years at this point, and I'd honestly rather strip naked and jump into a crocodile enclosure at the zoo than read just one more Twitter thread about why people who use insert input method here deserve to be beaten with shoes. Marathon's gameplay director Andrew Witz recently spoke on the current state of aim assist and mentioned regarding the mouse magnetism option, this is something we're trying out as a lever to keep the parity close between mouse and keyboard and controller. Again, I respect the reason. You're trying to make sure that one input method isn't clearly much better than the other, GG. I do kind of feel though that giving mouse and keyboard magnetism is a little bit crazy, and apparently so did a lot of other people. So many, in fact, that the Marathon dev team announced that during week 2 of the closed alpha, they are officially going to disable the mouse magnetism option. Now I gotta say, even as a mouse and keyboard player, I think this change does make sense because leaving it on would mean that mouse and keyboard would probably be the unquestionably dominant input method for Marathon. With this change though, the only thing the dev team has to do now is make sure that controller doesn't become the the unquestionably dominant input method on PC. It's a really delicate dance, and I don't envy the balance team because I'm sure it's crazy hard to get everything perfectly balanced, but at the very least, GG to the Marathon dev team to responding to community feedback so quickly. All right, why don't we talk about proximity chat real quick? This is probably going to be the most echo chambery circle jerk thing I say in all of today's video, but on the subject of Marathon having zero proximity chat, I'm going to mirror what a lot of other people out there are saying, which is that having zero proximity chat in Marathon would be nothing short of a gigantic L. Let me be clear, I completely understand why Bungie would want it to not be an option at all. Generally speaking, there are a ton of awful, terrible garbage people out there, racists, hate mongers, people who pour milk before cereal, who would no doubt immediately start spewing verbal diarrhea over the mic and pollute comms just for the sake of wanting to make other people's brains bleed. That being said, even with all the lunatics out there, I have extremely fun memories of proximity chat shenanigans in games like Halo 2 and some of the Call of Duties. I feel like this would make Marathon way more interesting and also produce a lot of hilarious, potentially viral clips of on-mic moments between players that would probably do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of bringing more people into the game. Again, I do understand that some people out there are single-digit IQ maniacs, but if and when those people show up, I feel like you should just have the option to report them for insert reason here. And if Bungie finds they got a dozen reports for just spewing hate speech over the mic, then bam, account gets permabanned. Everybody wins. I feel like you could have proxy chat on by default with the game telling you right away when you log in, hey, by the way, if you want, you can turn this off. And yeah, while many people out there would say, well, why the hell would I not turn it off, as leaving it on would lead to more teams probably finding my team in-game by accident, I still think that plenty of people would willingly leave it on just because it would lead to more fun and more interesting moments between teams in-game. Heat meter. All right, why don't we talk about the heat meter? If you're unfamiliar, in Marathon, there's a meter on your HUD that slowly goes up if you do things like sprinting, sliding, or meleeing. If the bar gets all the way full and overheats, you are then no longer able to do those things until the meter has a little bit of time to cool off. Now, I can almost completely guarantee that out of everything there is on the table for players to potentially argue about in Marathon, this mechanic specifically is going to be argued about a lot between now and the full release of the game. And if you're asking me, I'm kind of torn on it. On one hand, I understand where the devs are coming from on wanting this to be a thing. It's clear that they want Sprint to essentially be treated like a valuable resource that you, the player, have to manage. Manage it poorly and spam slide all over the dance floor like some hyperactive fox on Final Destination, and you're gonna be a sitting duck. However, if you manage it wisely, then maybe you'll triumph over the other team who isn't using it as effectively. On the other hand, having to constantly manage the heat meter is, admittedly, annoying. If there's one thing I truly know about the gaming community, other than most of them really love Hollow Knight, is that they hate having restrictions put on their movement abilities. They like to move fast, do things fast, be flashy, go crazy, and move like demons 24/7. And I admit, it's really fun when games let you play like that. The following scenario may happen to you a lot when playing Marathon. You're in-game when suddenly you notice that a nearby team is extracting and you think, oh hell yeah, time to go ruin somebody's day. You start running in that direction, but because you have to take breaks so frequently to not overexhaust the heat meter, you don't make it there in time. The other team safely gets to get out without you getting a chance to make them hate life. That is annoying, and if it weren't for the heat meter, I have a feeling that extractions would be way spicier, way more often. Now, I don't expect Bungie to completely remove the heat meter at this point because it seems like it's a big part of their design for the game. They already seem to have plenty of faction upgrades and certain in-game items designed to help you better manage the heat meter, so completely taking it out of the game would mean they would have to rewire a lot of rewards in the game right now. I really do wish they would tone it down a bit at base though. Either way, I hope Bungie is ready for an avalanche of feedback on this mechanic because I'd say about 80% of the people I've talked to just straight up hate it. The runners. Why don't we talk about the runners real quick? Two things in no particular order. First of all, I like their abilities and what they bring to the table, and for the time being, I think they're actually relatively well balanced for an alpha. All of their kits are useful in different situations. I had fun playing all the runners, and I'm interested to see both what the final two runners will bring to the table, as well as what other runners will eventually get down the line. That being said, I gotta be real, I absolutely hate the lack of visual customization available to the runners. By the way, don't freak out. This isn't going to turn into some weird grifter Coomer arc for me as a YouTuber where I call Bungie a bunch of uptight woke whatevers for making characters that don't make me Hulk out of my pants the minute I fire up the game. That is not what this is. I will say, though, that I think the lack of general runner customization is a huge mistake. I do kind of get where they're coming from. The devs want glitch to be glitch. They want Blackbird to be Blackbird as they see those characters. But still, are you really telling me that there isn't some happy medium we could hit where I could be Void, but maybe like my own slightly customizable version of Void? Now, I know that comparing the following games is definitely comparing apples, oranges, and bananas, but very quickly, just in terms of customization, I want to bring up Destiny 2 and also Monster Hunter Wilds. Again, very different games, I'm aware, but I know so many people who play those games were drawn in and played for much longer than they probably ever intended to because of the fact that they could customize the characters to some degree. Half the fun of playing Monster Hunter is just standing around in a social hub looking at everybody's wild, fun fashion. I read somewhere that the Marathon devs are also considering adding a social hub to Marathon, and all I can picture is just a dozen glitch players, all with identical outfits, just standing around and staring at each other. Now, I think a more fair comparison would probably be to a game like Apex Legends, which, by the way, in before people start shouting, Marathon isn't a hero shooter, even though I'm gonna be honest, it kinda is. After having played the alpha a whole bunch, I'm not sure why that argument was ever a thing. Marathon is 100% a blend between extraction shooter and a hero shooter. Anyway, I'm sure they're gonna do something similar to Apex in terms of, hey, you can get skins for each character, which, okay, sure, but all I'm saying is those skins better be absolute fire, or you're gonna lose out on a whole lot of people who stick around and play just for the fashion. In short, I'm just going to go on the record and say that I think some kind of character customization for your runners would be really great, and it would probably bring in a lot more players to this game, which would also be great, and I'm kind of sad it isn't a thing. Moving on to the solo experience. I don't even know if this is worth bringing up at all because it's probably going to bring in a flood of comments to the tune of, no shit, bro. But I will say that playing Marathon as a solo player is way different than playing with a full fire team of friends. I feel like when the game rolls out in September, if I have a group of buddies ping me on Discord and say, hey, do you want to hop on and do some runs? I'd probably say, hell yeah, knowing that fun shenanigans are sure to be had. But hopping on as a totally solo player doesn't really sound as appealing. Yeah, I could fire up some matches by myself for the sake of trying to bang out a few faction contracts, but then you might run into a weird situation where the players you get paired up with are also trying to complete their own faction contracts, and they're gonna run off to one location on the map with or without you. You also have the incredibly shitty situations where, for one reason or another, some rando on your team decides he's just gonna rage quit out of the game, leaving you high and dry, which happened to me on more than one occasion. Not really sure what exactly the solution is there, but right now I don't know if I could recommend Marathon as a game purely to solo players unless they really understand the challenges ahead of them going in. But for the gamers out there who kind of have a fun little core group and have very fuck it we ball type energy, sure, I think it would be fun for them to try out depending on the final price tag of the game. Extraction and enemy team frequency. At the risk of dialing the crazy meter on this game up to 11, I feel like extractions are kinda too quiet. Yes, there is a giant beam of light that goes up into the sky indicating when a team is extracting, but half the time you're probably gonna be too busy grabbing loot to notice. Most of the time I played, when the boys and I finally did realize there was an enemy team extracting nearby, by the time we finally got there, we were too late. I may come to regret this feedback, but I think it would be interesting if extractions came with a way louder audio cue that could be heard from much further away. I feel like you should really be hearing the dinner bell being rung when a team is trying to tap out, but that is just one man's opinion. Also, I feel that PvP engagements are kinda too infrequent for my liking. You can definitely bump up the number of fights per game you get into by really aggressively going out of your way to look for enemy teams, but remember, half the time you're also playing scavenger hunt so you can upgrade your faction tree. Maybe add in one more team to each map to slightly ramp up the crazy meter. Again, I may come to regret that feedback if they take it to heart, but it is a PvP game after all. It does feel very weird when I go through an entire match of a PvP game and bump into only one enemy team. Would more teams on the map result in more moments of me and my team getting wiped? Yeah, probably, but it would also result in more moments for me and my team bumping into other teams and wiping them out. And that, by the way, without question, is currently the best feeling in the game, bar none, and I simply want more of it. When you and the boys wipe another team, you feel awesome. It's a rush, and you immediately want to chase that dragon. More of that feeling, please. Random tidbits and feedback. Some little tidbits of feedback I have after playing Marathon are too small to make kind of a whole chapter for, so I'm just going to throw them out here. Also, keep in mind that I'm sure some of these are probably because the game is in alpha stage, and I assume, anyway, that they'll be fixed when the game fully comes out in September. First up, you can't cancel pings. For example, if you ping something on the map and then decide you want to unping that location because you don't want to go there anymore, you literally can't. I mean, you can ping somewhere else instead, so the new ping replaces the old one, but kind of crazy that you can't undo a ping. Next up, you can't take weapon mods off of a gun when they've already been applied. So if I find a weapon mod and put it on gun A while I'm out in a run, then later I find gun B, which I happen to like using a little bit more, and I try to take the weapon mod off of gun A and put it on gun B, I'm basically piss out of luck. Now, I kinda understand this a little bit. If I had to guess, it's probably a thing that was done on purpose to prevent paid exchanges of some kind, aka, hey, it's me, professional streamer man. If you pay me X dollars in subs, I'll invite you into my fire team. We'll launch into a match, and I'll give you these god tier weapon attachments or my gun, and thanks for doing business. So yeah, to a degree, I get it, but kind of frustrating, and hoping they find some kind of workaround to that, because I just want to swap weapon attachments. I'm not trying to open up some kind of streamer black market out here. Swapping back and forth between weapons is not smooth at all. In Destiny 2, I have it set up so that when I scroll up on my mouse wheel, I whip out whatever weapon I have in my kinetic slot or my top slot if you're unfamiliar with D2. And if I scroll down on my mouse wheel, I whip out my energy weapon or the weapon in my second slot if you're unfamiliar. I whip out my heavy weapon by clicking on the mouse wheel. In Marathon, you do not have this option, and it's straight up driving me crazy. If Marathon gave me the option to whip out my knife by clicking on my mouse wheel and did the scroll up, scroll down thing for the other two weapons, that would be huge, and I'm literally begging Bungie to add that feature into the game, because right now changing weapons does not feel good at all. Next up, why don't we talk about the heal wheel, or whatever it's called. In the game, if you want to heal up or reapply a shield pack, you open up a little item wheel that has healing items in set locations. I don't know if I'm alone in my experience here, but I found using this to be kind of frustrating. Swapping to and using these stronger, more efficient healing items is not a smooth experience. It feels very clunky. It can be especially terrifying when you're hurt behind cover and an enemy team is breathing down your neck. In short, I think it would be way better if we could just straight up customize the heal wheel. Again, I understand that they're different games, but Monster Hunter Wilds utilizes an in-game radial menu, which is completely customizable, allowing you to put literally any item or even some in-game actions anywhere, and that system kicks major ass. Please copy that system, I am begging you. Moving on, the sound of nearby enemy footsteps are incredibly quiet in Marathon, which you may hear brought up by other streamers or whatnot. Now, I originally hated this and was really on team, please make the footsteps louder. However, after more time thinking about it, I feel like I no longer want them to make footsteps really loud. If they were, I feel like players who knew enemy players were nearby would resort to major camping. They'd basically plant themselves down in a corner and remain completely still, listening for the footsteps to get closer and closer before getting an incredibly free team wipe. Feel free to have a different opinion on that one, but I am now firmly on the team. Don't make the footsteps too much louder, please. Okay, next, and I openly admit this is a minor gripe, but Bungie has said they want any and all feedback, so fuck it, I'm including it. This is the Marathon friends list. For the love of God, the children yearn for alphabetical order. I'm sure it'll be fixed in the alpha, but for now, it's like a tiny itch that I'm unable to scratch. All right, and now we come to final thoughts. How do I feel about Marathon right now overall? Am I gonna play it? Am I gonna grind it? Do I recommend it to other people? Am I hyped about it? Yada, yada, yada. All right, at the risk of being overly blunt, I'm gonna say this. I've heard from a lot of people who have said something along the lines of, I can't believe Bungie is completely abandoning Destiny and putting all their effort into a new game. I gotta say, I don't really feel like that's what's happening here. Did I have fun playing Marathon? Yes, I did. Did I get the distinct feeling that Bungie is planning on putting all their eggs into one shiny basket moving forward? Definitely no. Marathon, to me, at least how it plays right now, will likely be an enjoyable enough side game that I fire up from time to play with the boys when the mood strikes me. Somebody pings me on Discord, hey, want to do a few runs? Sure, why the hell not? Log on, have a few laughs, chase the rush of getting a couple team wipes, maybe upgrade the faction tree here and there, log off. While entertaining, I in no way see this game being the future sole favorite child of Bungie. This, to me, will basically be an entertaining enough side game that I fire up from time to time when the mood strikes me. Kinda like Dead by Daylight or Party Animals, aka the best damn 20 bucks I ever spent. Look, between you and me, while I do feel there is potential here for Marathon, like good potential, I'm definitely also hoping for more. If this is only a small taste of what's to come, then hell yeah, can't wait to be dazzled with whatever other mysteries are in store for the community when the game fully comes out. However, if September rolls around and we only get maybe 3 or 4 more guns, a few more items, the extra 2 runners and maps, and that's it, I mean, I'm still gonna play it, but it would definitely fall harder into the category of a game I'll play when the homies ping me, as opposed to a game where I'm the one fiendishly logging on and pinging the homies. But again, I only speak for myself. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.